Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, and I'm coming to you today from the Proclima office in Auckland, where there might be a little bit of noise in the background because they're hosting a very popular builders breakfast, which is exciting to see. And I've got Zach on the call. Zach, how are you?
I'm good. I'm coming to you from my little office in the Fremont neighborhood of Seattle.
And
it's good here.
We're also joined this week by Mary. Good to see you again, Mary.
Hi, Matthew. How are you doing?
Good. It's cold here, but I understand it's happy summertime. Officially, is it summer now for you guys in America?
Not for us in the Northwest. No, we can't call it summer.
Oh, really?
It's still,
I thought you'd ticked that into summer.
No. It's still spring. We're getting lots of rain. Today is beautiful.
When does summer start?
Yeah. Well, if traditionally in the Pacific Northwest, we say that summer doesn't start reliably until the day after July 4th.
You still got a little while.
But that's beginning to change with climate change. So I think generally it starts on summer solstice.
Right.
Maybe a little bit earlier. Yeah. But California's different.
Sadly, it's getting hot here already.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's getting hot, and I saw that in other parts of the world it's getting very, very hot. Saw record temperatures in India over 50 degrees Celsius this week, which is pretty scary, and already getting warm in other parts in the northern hemisphere. So yeah, it's kind of scary out there. But we're talking about someone in some pretty cold climates, working in some colder climates this week. A really great interview. Another part, this will be our final part, I think, Zach, of the prefab series.
That's right, the final installment.
And a fantastic interview, Mary, that you did with Quantum, which we'll get into very shortly. But before we do, let's do a quick shout out to our sponsors.
Yeah, a big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you, too, to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Glavel, Ingui Architecture, Minotaur, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stillcorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks, too, to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Gradient, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, PH Air Seal, and Source 2050. Big thank you to our sponsors.
Excellent. All right, so Mary, you've spoken to Quantum Passivhaus before. Where did you first come across them?
Oh, that's a good question. Somebody must have, when I was doing the prefab issue in 2021, somebody that I talked to must have said, oh, well, you need to talk to Quantum Passivhaus also, because that was the first time that I came across them when I was doing that issue.
Well, let's jump straight in because they do a really good sort of overview and talk about the company history, where they've come from and the success they've had, where they're going. So let's jump straight in and listen to the story of Quantum Passivhaus.
Well, welcome, Angie Horner, and you're co-founder of Quantum Passivhaus, which is located up in Ontario, Minden, Ontario. And it was great to see you at our recent prefab event. Thank you for being a sponsor of it. So for those who might have missed you speaking there, can you give me a short history of Quantum and your role in its development?
Sure. Thanks so much. And thank you for having us. And also thank you for hosting the prefabrication forum as well. It was wonderful. So about Quantum. So we started as a husband and wife team back in 2013 was when the idea came about. My husband and I were both working in different fields, me in ecology, him in construction, and a bit of design his whole life. So we decided to join forces and we started investigating working together. And Passive House was really the only means of construction we were particularly interested in. My husband was fatigued of finding a lot of buildings that were suffering from excess moisture and condensation and finding rot. So tired of being the bearer of bad news. So we wanted to find the best way of building that we could possibly conceive of. And we were delighted to find out that there already was. Passive House Association at that time was then in Ottawa, and now we have a great one out in BC. So I had the mom and pa idea, and Abby Sherry, my husband and partner in this business, had the grand idea of doing much, much more. We built our first passive house here in Minden. We experimented on ourselves and we were delighted with the results. It's one of those things that we really did feel like you need to see it to believe it. And we were tickled pink ourselves. And then at the time, we did all our passive house training. And then I guess 2017 is when our building was done. And we realized if we wanted to do what we perceived would be a small market at the time, we needed to branch out and be available across a wider geographic region, which is what led us to doing prefabricated panels. We were fortunate. We had a couple of business partners that joined us at the time. And we set up shop in Minden, where we worked with a structural engineer we had a long-term relationship with, and developed our initial panels, which were for new construction. And they were based on meeting the cold climate criteria up here in Minden. We also have one that we developed for cool climate. And eventually we did get those all certified with the International Passivhaus Institute. But to not carry on too much more on this short story, we've since evolved to be extremely interested in doing retrofits of buildings.
Well, I really obviously want to hear about the retrofit panel because that's very exciting. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about the new construction panels. So how do the two panels differ, the cold climate and the cool climate? And then also just what do they consist of? Give our listeners a picture of what the panels themselves consist of.
Sure, that sounds great. So the panels are wood framed. And so structurally, they're wood framed. They have sheathing. So let's say when we speak about the panels, the cool climate one, it's more, so they meet the criteria in terms of insulation for the certification. But structurally, when we want to talk about the dimensions, et cetera, the cool climate one is 12 inches thick, the panel itself. And on the inside is where we have our sheathing, which is different than a lot of modern construction that likes to put sheathing on the outside. So we use high performance membranes, Proclima-based, Intello X, the commercial grade, as well as Cemento 1000 on the exterior. And we leave the exterior unsheathed. And for us, that's about making sure that we have enough opportunity for the panel to expire in terms of moisture, to let the moisture out. So we have semi-vapor permeable panels that are vapor permeable between inside and inside of the building, the panel, and outside. The insulation itself is EcoBat mineral wool. And we have in the past also done cellulose, which is what we initially started with. So we also do have options to switch out the insulation for folks. So our cool one is basically a slimmer version of our cold climate, which is a 16 inches plus a service cavity on the inside.
Great. And what's your general delivery area?
It's been pretty broad, to be honest. I would say Ontario. We have had panels go down to the town of Simcoe, which is down. Actually, we're servicing an area right now in Leamington where we're building duplexes and fourplexes. So the deep south, as well as we've also sent panels up to Wawapakeewin as well, which I would call the subarctic.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a range in terms of climate. But you do have the two panels, so that makes sense. And do you ship the panels with windows installed or no windows?
Typically we haven't, but we've made some changes recently where we do have the capacity to do so. And also I should mention, although we speak of the two panels that are the two panel types that are certified, they are actually just samples of multi. Like we've built our system so we can do walls as thin as 10 inches or as thick as 20 inches. So we just selected to certify the 12-inch with insulated surface cavity and the 12-inch without surface cavity, insulated surface cavity, and then the same for the 16-inch.
So, and obviously, since you mentioned the multifamily project, your main market is single family. Is that correct? But you're also obviously doing multifamily.
Yeah, to be honest, we've done a bit of a switch. When we started out as a smaller, younger company, we felt that the full service was what we needed to offer in terms of getting the panel and passive house out there. But now we feel like there's definitely enough partners that are out there, like really well-trained, skilled tradespersons, fabulous designers. And so we are more working on the model of partnering with people. So yeah, so we're really pleased about that. So we're working on making our panels as easy as possible for people to adopt, for like a general contractor to adopt using. We offer training programs in-house to do that, and some on-site supervision and quality assurance as well to help people feel and to know, so we can also know that the panel's being installed the way it was meant to be and have a successful outcome.
Wow, that's really maybe not a huge shift, but that's a shift in your business model. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's occurred as because now you've been in business, you've been producing panels for, is it 7 years?
That's right. Yeah. Since 2017. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think it's somewhere where we knew we wanted to go. And I think we just decided that when you know where you want to go, you just need to go there and not delay any further, which is why I feel like we've really put together, like continued to grow our team. We now have 24 people on staff.
Wow.
Yeah. And great partnerships we also have with building science experts, and just really, I think our goal is to make the best quality that is affordable and easy to use. So quality is definitely what we want to focus on, and longevity.
And that's interesting that you're offering training in your manufacturing facility. Is that where you do it?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep. Pre-COVID, we actually used to partner with some other passive house companies and develop the certified passive house tradesperson training here. And it was quite fun because we had a big a module set up. Like it was, someone could say it would be big enough to be someone's, I don't know, I guess a tiny house. It was like having a tiny house in our shop. And so we would put it together and do the air sealing and do some tests and teach about different ways of installing windows and all the different manufacturers. And it was really great. So unfortunately, after COVID, that stopped. But I feel like we've always wanted to maintain we want to help people make it as smooth as possible and as successful as possible, adopting all the great products that are out there, ours and other people's as well. But we definitely felt that this training was needed for us to be able to sort of pass the torch on a little bit and focus on making the really good product and be able to encourage the adoption of it beyond our builds. So we're focusing less on design. We are maintaining a single family home. We have some model homes. So we've had, through our experience, at least 20 different individual custom designs made. So some of those have been adopted by customers in the past, like second clients and third clients. And now we have some model homes that we've designed specifically to offer to people as kits, to builders as kits. So that's where we are keeping our finger a little bit in the single family home, but we want to be careful not to dilute ourselves too much. So that's why we're limiting to packages.
Wow, you're really branching out in all sorts of directions. That's great. And tell me a little bit about the multifamily project that you mentioned briefly. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Sure. It's First Nations down in Leamington area, which is close to the town of Windsor, about 2 hours from Toronto. And involved in the project first person to become involved was the project manager, which is Green Reason. So they're working on behalf of Caldwell First Nation. Caldwell First Nation is the owner of the project. And so under the direction or the not providing direction to the project manager, they've managed to install infrastructure, like starting from a field, install infrastructure for a large for first undertaking development of their community, bringing their people back to their community. So what we've been working on is just phase one, and it's 28 units composed of duplexes and fourplexes, but there are other phases as well. So this is going to be larger. It's a beautiful design. It radiates out from the community center. So the roads radiate in a gorgeous way. So I believe that Baird AE is part of the original design of the layout, but I know 100% that Baird AE has been the architect here. And so Baird AE was hired by Green Reason, and then Quantum Passivhaus was also brought in to provide some passive house expertise to share amongst the team, as well as to provide our passive house panels for the project.
That sounds like a great development, unintended, for both for the community and also, a good way for you to jump into multifamily housing more.
Yeah. And I should mention, because it's so integral to the performance of the buildings, Tandem Engineering did the mechanical of the electrical, the plumbing, and the HVAC. And so, yeah, it looks like we are on road to certify. We have the option of certifying with Building Performance Assurance Council or else low energy building through the Passivhaus Institute. It's yet to be determined if the nation is going to choose to certify, but it's nice to know that we have a very unique shape to the buildings. It's very stylish, and we lie performance-wise in terms of heating and cooling between a classic and a low energy. So we didn't have to squeak by at all. It's really, really well-performing buildings.
That's great. And when is construction going to start?
Construction is underway.
Oh, it's already underway.
Yeah. So we've been making sure we take all our construction documentation as we go in case they certify, but they should have an opening come July 1st. Occupants in.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So the panels must be all manufactured already.
Oh, yeah. That's well done, and they're all installed, and some of the units are drywalled, and we're just going to need to perform our final blower door tests and make sure the ERVs are all commissioned well, or as per the design. So July 1st, the big day for the nation. Everyone gets to come home.
And is there going to be an open house for those who might be in your area and would love to see this?
Yes, I believe I know that there's going to be a celebration, and I should find out more. I can get back to you on that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, that just sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
I would love to see it if I were in your area.
I'll let you know, 100%.
That's really exciting. It's just, it's so great to hear. Obviously, it's a result of the community outreach and the trainings that you've been doing. And it's great to hear that that's coming to fruition. Okay, so now I really want to hear about your retrofit panel and what inspired you to make it and what's your aim with it?
So my background being ecology, there's some principles in ecology that apply to building science, which is kind of like an ecology of itself. And that is that conservation is so much easier than creating or recreating. So for me, that boils down to you've got a building. If you can save that building instead of destroying and recreating, that's the way to go. So just a fundamental belief that taking advantage of what we got when it's possible, and not, that fans out in so many ways, right? Like in terms of reducing carbon footprint of waste, etc. So retrofits are dear to my heart. Waste not, want not, dear to my heart. But I have to say, I have to give some credit to the Atmospheric Fund, which is a not-for-profit organization in the Toronto area and extending it somewhat beyond, at least the GTA, Greater Toronto Area. So they did a fabulous job of creating a bit of a roadmap for people who wanted to develop retrofit panels. They have undertaken the challenge of really wanting to grow the retrofit market and stimulate it. So what they did is they put out a request for proposals for pre-qualification to be on a retrofit panel, an overcladding retrofit panel roster. So sorry, that's a lot of words, but basically they put out this roadmap. This is what we'd like to see in a retrofit panel. And it was just amazing. So I was like, guys, thank you for all the work and all the other partners that help support them in developing what they would like to see in retrofit panels. But it allowed us to basically say, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to get testing. We need to develop our panels to meet this type of criteria. We know we want to get testing on the air tightness by third party, the water penetrate, any water impermeability, so many different things that it got us on the roadmap for getting a lot of that done. So what we did is we submitted our package, and the roster is now closed now, but they will be allowing people to at least they've reserved the right to add to it in the future. So maybe the roster will be added to in the future. We know that we're going to be on it for pre-assembled retrofit panels, and we have a non-combustible version that goes up to 8 stories. And then we have a wood frame one for those that we prefer to have lower carbon for lower stories.
Wow, that is just so exciting.
I know it is.
And has anybody reached out to you yet to, talk about using your retrofit panels?
Well, again, we're going to be our own guinea pigs. So although everything is rigorously tested and it's all prepared by a structural engineer, et cetera, I have full confidence in it, but we're going to do our first small retrofit for a single family home on our own house. So we have a house that is older and probably built in the 40s or the 60s. So we find it's a really good opportunity for us to test out our panels and gain some more experience on them. And so that's what we're going to be doing first as well. And one thing I'd like to mention too, I like the idea of servicing the single family market. It's typically been thought of as being too expensive, but I think in an age where sometimes people are looking at maybe taking their single family home and again, making the most of it, sometimes people might take a single family home and make a duplex out of it. So in addition, as well as when you need to change your overcladding, is such a perfect opportunity for a retrofit. And up in Ontario with our Ontario, I don't remember the name of it, Ontario Planning Act. The Planning Act allows that everyone in Ontario is allowed to have a secondary dwelling, whether it's attached or not. And some communities are even allowed to have a third dwelling. So this is part of why you've seen a lot of the laneway houses happen in Toronto. So up in these rural areas and other areas, people might select to make an addition and retrofit at the same time, which is kind of a bit of bang for buck. So that's kind of what we're doing with our place. We're going to turn our single family dwelling into something that can be 2 dwellings, just by some modifications so that when we age in place and the kids are gone, we can have an apartment upstairs. And it will also have a bit of an extension while we're doing our Passivhaus panels, or while we're doing our Passivhaus quality panels for retrofitting. We figured this is a good time to do it. Then the other project that we have is 8 stories, and it is located in Guelph, and it's a multi-unit residential. And it just happens to be opportune that they're having some issues with their brick cladding. And so we suggested this could be a very good opportunity to do a retrofit.
So there's so much exciting news in there. So this project in Guelph, are they looking at overcladding over the brick, or are they going to take the brick off?
Overcladding over the brick. So what we have in our retrofit panels, they can be applied to different substrates. And in this case, we would remove part of the brick, just where the attachments are to go, and then we'd leave the rest of it there, provided it's safe to do so. Yeah.
Great. And I know, I'm pretty sure I saw that you are going to be at the Retrofit Canada conference. Is that correct?
Indeed, yes.
Which the Atmospheric Fund is one of the, I think they call them deep retrofit accelerator initiators, or do I have that right?
I think you likely do. It sounds
right. And which is just an exciting concept, because what they're trying to do is make it easier for people to do retrofits so that we can get more retrofits done. And it's great that you're partnering up with them. I'm excited I'll be going to the conference myself, and I'll be excited to hear more about what the Atmospheric Fund is up to there. And, this progress that we all need to make to making more retrofits happen.
Mm-hmm. I think it's nice because as we spoke in our local community about passive house to individuals, they always asked, can you do a retrofit? And it's nice that this work that's happening now, I believe it will eventually make it much more cost effective for folks having everything ready to go so they're not custom acts all the time. Yeah.
And with the project in Guelph, are you going to also be responsible for the windows, installing the windows, or is that somebody else? Are you just bringing the panels, or how is that working?
We would be looking at definitely having the panels installed in advance. So that's one of the things that we do have as an option. So we would have the windows installed in advance in the panels. And then same with the cladding, we'll do our best to see if we can make it aesthetically a good match where all the claddings meet. So this is still early stages yet, but we've definitely been working on making sure that we can offer cladding that's already on the panels as they come, and as well as windows installed. It just makes everything so much easier, especially if you're 8 stories up.
Well, you guys have certainly been busy. It's very nimble business models that you've been pursuing. That's great.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, at this point, what percentage roughly is your business single family versus multifamily or retrofits? I should say single family new construction versus multifamily or retrofits.
No, I'd say we're definitely at a pivot. So if we're to take this year, I'd say it's about 50-50. So, but we have very few customs left in the queue, and we're going to be basically redirecting the people to plans that already exist.
Wow, that's great. And I understand that it can be tough to convince people to go with a kit plan and already, because people think, oh yeah, but as long as I'm building a house, I want it to be custom for myself. Is that an issue that you deal with, or are you finding, of course there's a cost advantage to picking a pre-planned house. Are you finding that is appealing enough that your customers aren't resisting that?
I actually think it's going to be more appealing to people more appealing to people, because what it does is it takes a lot of the stress out of the process. They're not going through a design process, which also includes a budgeting process, which can be a lot of iteration back and forth in terms of what they want versus what they need and versus what the budget is. So I feel like it actually is nice that folks can come by. We have also finishing packages. So one of the services we offer with the kits are as well takeoffs. So it's very easy to do comparison shopping with different people that are providing finishes, so that the GC can make his life a little simpler. As also, we have packages that are put together by an interior designer that we partnered with, and that can also simplify things for folks as well. Because building a house, your own house, is no small feat. It's a big investment for people, and I think as much as people know what they're getting into at the beginning, the more questions that are already answered, I think it really reduces stress for them. So I actually anticipate it's going to be nice for people.
Yeah. Well, that certainly makes sense if you have a whole soup to dessert solution, because, many homeowners, they're not architects. They can't figure out all the questions that need to be answered. So yeah, that's great.
And I think most of the homes that are bought in Ontario anyways are probably mostly, if they're new builds, they're mostly spec built. And I think that's because people like that. This will work, and they can see it and away they go. Yeah.
So we've talked about so many changes in your business. Are there any climate related policies there in Ontario or funding initiatives that we haven't touched on that you think are going to be affecting your business?
Well, again, I think Toronto's been a very big leader. Toronto has made available for people to apply for interest-free loans. It's the focus, I believe, is going to continue to be on getting sort of a bit of a triple win, so that as the province seeks to encourage retrofits, acknowledging that there's a lot more older buildings that are worse performing than even a typical new building, that the retrofits is a really big, they recognize that retrofits might be the bigger challenge than just influencing new builds, and that they can keep us busy to 2030, no problem. So when they want to stimulate the market and get all those processes of tickety boo and more cost effective, the funding is typically being proposed to go to affordable housing, multi-units, where there's some really good cost effectiveness, and then also the social benefit. So I think that's a great strategy. I do hope that someday it will trickle down towards other buildings, like smaller buildings, so that, but I do definitely understand that a multi-unit is definitely good bang for the dollar.
Right.
In terms of accomplishing quite a bit quickly.
Well, it's been so great talking to you, and I'm so excited, and I look forward to seeing you then in Vancouver in a few weeks at the Retrofit Canada conference. That's great. And it's just great to see some tangible steps being made toward making retrofits more practical and eventually, hopefully, more cost effective for everybody to be involved in. And you seem very well positioned.
Well, definitely it's where we would like to be. I particularly have I'm very excited about doing retrofits, not to negate any of the new builds, because they have their place too. They definitely do with their housing shortage. But I really hope that next time we meet in a year's time, I can say, here's some pretty neat things that we've done, so we can continue to share them with people.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the Guelph's project sounds like a great case study right there.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, again, congratulations, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate it. I really, really appreciate you and all that you guys do at the Passivhaus Accelerator. So thank you so much.
And that was Angie Horner of Quantum Passivhaus speaking with you, Mary. Let's start with you. What was your highlights from that conversation?
Well, obviously, I'm excited about the changes in their business model in the 4 years since I first talked to them. I mean, they've gone from single-family housing exclusively to multifamily housing, and of course, very excitingly, retrofit panels. So I just love to see a good company succeed like that.
Yeah, it's really impressive going from a relatively small company. And from what I understood at the beginning, one of the key reasons they went to prefab was that they wanted to increase the reach that they were able to have, and the prefabrication was a way to do that, because they could send their panels a further distance than what they could just build locally. Obviously, that's caught on, and people see the benefit of it. I really like that idea of, I mean, I've referred to it as white labeling, but the idea of selling panels kind of as an element that other builders can then use for their own projects. I think that's a great way of having a business as a manufacturer that can just keep on going, doesn't have to rely on picking up specific jobs, but it's also really good for other contractors who can just use those prefabricated elements that they know are going to be high quality. So I'm excited to see more of that as a model of prefab. And of course, yeah, like you say, the retrofit, super exciting. Zach, what were your takeaways?
Well, it echoes what both of you just said. I think we're on the same wavelength. I think that it was really exciting to hear about how Quantum Passivhaus has developed, and as both of you are alluding to, the way that they've evolved has been made possible by the maturation of the industry as well, like the Passivhaus, the community of Passivhaus builders and designers that have sprung up across Canada. So I think that was another piece that was really encouraging, because the move, initially she referred to a perception that there was this small market, so they needed to be able to deliver beyond that, and that's what prefab was about. And they had that kind of full service single family housing model, but because over time there were a bunch of other builders then that were getting up to speed and could become really good partners for them, they were able to make that shift to as you say, the white label panel manufacturing approach, and still thrive as a company, and in some ways, kind of help leverage more and more scale. I think we're there. It was very clear that they're, as many of us are, very mission driven in this work, and so I think they're looking for how can they make the biggest impact. So it was cool to see how their development as a company is kind of mirrored in some ways and made possible by the development of the larger movement, which is really great to see.
Obviously, Angie's background in ecology plays a bit of a role as part of that mission, and her interests in the environment. I really like the connection that she made between ecology and building science, and also around the idea of conservation being better than recreating something, having to demolish something and rebuild it, as it relates to retrofit, and just that general concept in nature of reusing and making best use of our existing resources. That's such a common theme of people. I think that most people recognize that it is this huge challenge, but it's exciting to see companies like Quantum that are actually coming up with solutions to that challenge and really figuring out ways to go about some level of standardization of retrofit. Because I know that the big challenge really is that every house is different, every building's different. So getting the right level of standardization, I think, is a big part of the problem that they seem to be working on. Mary, you've heard a little bit about this atmospheric fund before. You at least come across it. I hadn't heard of it before, but it sounds like just another example of a fantastic pot of money that's being put towards some real climate solutions.
Right. It's one of the Canadian federal government initiatives that is funding the atmospheric fund, as far as I understand, or at least contributing to the funding of it. And it's pretty exciting to specifically have entities that are tasked, being a retrofit concierge service. And as part of that concierge service, I guess the Atmospheric Fund is encouraging the manufacturing of retrofit panels. What better way to scale retrofitting?
Well, and also the recognition that that's going to be part of some goals, some 2050 goals, and even goals leading up to 2050 around net zero. That is going to be buildings themselves are an important part of that puzzle, and existing buildings are a really important subset of that puzzle. So it's really encouraging to see that serious money is being put into tangible projects to address some of those challenges.
And that conversation reminded me, of course, of our interview recently with Tim McDonald on episode 187. And Tim is doing, a bunch of retrofits of multifamily buildings in the Boston area. And just he framed it so well of we have this notion that deep energy retrofits are expensive, but he reframed it that saving, building these buildings as an expensive, saving buildings is cheap, because when he was looking at the numbers, the cost of doing one of these passive house retrofits with this panelized approach is roughly 50% what it would cost to scrape the building, demolish the building, and build new. So there are so many good reasons for us to be focusing on retrofits.
Another highlight from me was the First Nations project. I think that's really exciting. I've been having conversations with some iwi, some local tribes here, I think there's a huge amount of value in talking with different people of different cultures with different needs and different desires around housing. And it's always great to hear about when a solution has been found and is being explored to provide for those needs. And, if higher quality housing can be provided to all types of people, but particularly providing housing for, in this case, First Nations, I think it's really exciting to explore that and see what other opportunities might come out, and also what other learning might come out of doing projects like that.
It is really exciting project. And just this, of course, the best part about it is the housing that the First Nations group is going to get. And I believe they were called Caldwell. But also, in a way, the symbolism of choosing Passive House for their first housing that they get to have as a community. It's such a great merging of housing supply, building community, and Passive House. I just love that. And I think it's also, in a way, picks up on one of the themes in her business development is community building. I think that they did a really great job of they reached out and they were training builders on using their product. And that's a great form of community building that probably has helped them with marketing.
Yeah, very cool. Great company, great community, like you say, Mary, and doing some really good stuff. Any final comments from you, Zach?
No, same. That was great interview, and cool to see what Quantum's doing.
Yeah, and you're following this journey a little bit coming up. Mary, you mentioned that you're going to the Retrofit Canada conference. I love the fact that there is such a thing as the Retrofit Canada conference. That's positive in itself, but it's great that you're going to be along. You're going to try and catch some people and record some interviews while you're there.
I am indeed. And yes, it's, the first time I went to it, I was just so excited that there was a Retrofit Canada conference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's great to be with a group of very like-minded people all working together to create solutions.
Yeah. Awesome. And what else we got coming up, Zach?
Well, this week we have a 101 episode of Passive House Accelerator Live on Wednesday, June 5th. And that will be with Galen Stengel of Stengel Engineering. Galen has done the mechanical engineering of a whole bunch of really amazing Passive House projects in North America. So he's going to be presenting, Can We Eliminate Heating and AC? At this 101 episode. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then you just mentioned, both of you just were talking about the Retrofit Canada conference. That's on June 12th and 13th in Vancouver, BC. And we'll include a link in show notes if folks are interested in catching that. And then the next week, we have the Passive House Canada Conference in beautiful Victoria, BC at the University of Victoria. That'll be June 17th through 19th. And I know, Mary, you're going to be at that one as well, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so that will include a link to that one too. And then we are in the midst of, and by the time this episode goes live, we will have just published the third of 3 special episodes recorded by Ilka Cassidy. She was at the Green Building United 2024 Sustainability Symposium recently, and she recorded a special 3-episode series from that conference. So check that out on Passive House Podcast, wherever you listen to our podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for bringing us that conversation, Mary. I really enjoyed that. I'm a little bit jealous of all those great things that you're getting to go and visit around Canada, but that's very, very cool to hear that so much good work's going on there, not just Passive House, but also with prefab and retrofit. All good stuff. Thank you very much. Good to see you both, and we'll be back again next week for a regular episode on Passive House Podcast.